Perfect. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode of Masters of Product. Our topic for today is how AI is transforming organizations. And to talk about that, in our studio today, we have Shashank Panchangam. Shashank is currently the CPO at Crowley, a 130-year-old marine logistics company. He's held multiple leadership roles at Halliburton, Siemens, and has 23 years of building great products. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I help product organizations use AI to be more efficient and effective. You can learn more about it at echo-point.com. Shank, welcome to the show.
Thank you
and
for
thanks for
having
bearing
me.
with all the technical difficulties. I'm glad we can do it on Zoom.
No, not at all, Mustafa. Thank you for having me. Really excited to be part of your series here. I see you had a lot of great speakers before, so I am excited to be one of your guests here.
Thank you very much for being here. I'm so glad we connected on LinkedIn a few months ago, and I'm glad we can able to do this. So when you said yes, I had to jump on the I had to jump on the chance. If it's okay with you, let's kind of start with the big picture, right? I mean, transforming organizations with AI is a big topic, right? And so let's just start with your point of view. Like, how do you see AI transforming organizations?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if you take a step back and think about what is happening, right? So let's the biggest change I would say is the shift in baseline. Let me explain what I mean by that. Right. So let's go back into the 70s and 80s. How did organizations do their business? How was sales conducted? How was operations done? What was the time to market for a product?
Right.
Look at that time span. Look at the effort it was being done in the 70s and 80s. Let's go into the 2000s when, we had more memory, more software, and you can see the acceleration. The time to acquire a customer has come down. Operations has become much more efficient. Product development has become more efficient. Industrial automation is becoming more efficient. Now, from 2000, if you come to now, what's going to happen in an organization?
Right?
So, Moore's law said every 18 months memory, goes double. What I heard Satya say recently, with AI, every 6 months, it's going to start doubling. Right? So what does that mean? That means the organization's baseline is going to change.
Of course.
Right? So everything that we are doing today, it's going to be much more efficient. The time it takes to acquire a customer would be shorter for the salespeople, and I'll tell you how. Operations, the time it takes to execute would become shorter. Product innovation, product development, prototypes, everything else will be much faster. But more importantly, I feel the ability to look at bigger challenges that we couldn't solve before, I think now they are in the horizon, right? So I'm very excited about what might happen in the next 5 to 10 years, right? If the last 20 years is any indicator, I think the next 20 years is going to be fantastic, right? So I'm super excited about what can happen. But at the same time, there has to be reality checks. I've gone through these hype cycles before, right? We've gone through transformation, digital transformation is going to solve everything. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Keep your hopes down, but I think there is real potential this time.
Good. Well, I actually like the point of view that you're taking because it is a organization-wide piece. And I like the 3 things you focus on, right? You talked about the sales piece, you talked about the operation piece, you talked about the product piece. I'm wondering if you can double down on one of these things. So why don't let's start with sales. Like, how do you see sales actually using AI, and how is that going to help you acquire customers faster?
I'll give you some examples here, right? So if I look at our own account team, right? So what do they do on a day in and day out basis? They go and look for some customers and so on. But there is a lot of paperwork that they are bogged down with, right? They are trying to get proposals out. They're trying to get information from the customers. They're trying to enter that information into these devices and so on. We did one internal study some time back, right? So just to see how much time they actually spend doing manual work.
Yeah.
What if I can liberate them from all those things?
Yes.
The second thing is with AI, now the insights that we can offer them are much more, right? Now they could be more targeted when they go after the customers. They have more information. They know the trends, patterns, the likes and dislikes of the customer, and so on. So I feel, and I think this is going to, we'll have data points in the next 2, 3 years, right? That the time to acquire a customer will drastically come down. If today it's X, I'm expecting almost 20, 30, 40% reduction in the time it takes to acquire a customer, right? So that's on the sales channel. On the automation operations side,
yes,
I think that is the low-hanging fruit, right? Everybody is talking about that. I think that is going to happen first, where operations will get completely streamlined. If we look at supply chain, for example, that's where I come from, right? So in the supply chain industry, you look at the operations, most of the work is documents, manual stuff, pulling information from there. Do I have end-to-end visibility? Can I operate efficiently? Can I make sure I can do predictive maintenance ahead of time? All of those, some of them are already being done, right? But I think now it's only going to accelerate. I think operational efficiency is going to be is zooming far ahead, right?
Yeah.
But I think for all of these to happen, the third most important thing I feel is workforce reskilling. Today, if the workforce doesn't think AI first, right? If they do the way they're doing business, none of these changes will happen.
Yep, I agree.
Right. So the workforce reskilling, I think, is a big area that needs a lot of attention, and that will help trigger everything that I was talking about.
Without a doubt. Well, you're singing my tune because I actually completely agree. The third example you mentioned was the product piece. So I was wondering if you can actually go details into that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look at from a product organization, you and I, are in that space.
Yeah.
The way how product managers think about building something today, right? So you have a hypothesis, you build prototypes, you test the market and so on. The time to build the prototypes is now going to shrink, right? So with AI, rapid
like hours,
prototyping,
it's hours, it's not even days.
Hours instead of days and weeks, right? And the product manager should also start thinking about what agents do they already have available.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is as you start building more and more of these solutions, majority of it will be basic agents that can be reused, right? The most important aspect is in the business logic area. That's where you're going to focus on the problem. You're going to solve those problems. You're going to understand what is the challenge, but then leveraging the different agents. For example, document recognition agent or CRUD operation agents. All of those would be standard agents that get built, but you should focus on solving the problem. So product managers also need to start thinking slightly differently, how they write their requirements, how they actually want their products to behave, how it's going to be executed. I think all of those have to change a lot.
Very much.
And they are the ones who need to think AI first, right? So they have to say, how can I use AI to do all these things? Right? I mean, if they start thinking from that perspective, AI will do a whole bunch of things. These guys are going to be more of prompt engineers, right? So they will be putting in the right kind of prompts. They will be framing the questions properly, putting the right kind of problem statements there. But I think that's where the product managers.
Yeah, I agree. And many of the PMs that I talk to or the PMs that we consult with, it is really using AI as a second brain, right? In many ways, it is there as an assistant to help you do that and even go beyond some of the things, right? So this is fantastic. Can I, if it's okay with you, I would like to double down on this because the things that you talked about in sales, operations, and product, and we can go as deep as you want in product. None of that happens without true change. You mentioned about reskilling, right? But reskilling is one part of it. So I'm curious if you just look at the way you're thinking about it in your organization, or when when you talk to other leaders, how are you thinking about the changes to the organization or changes to the process or the roles, right? On any one of those verticals, right? We can go down on.
Yeah, look, I'm looking at it from three different places, and I'll give you examples so that I think it makes relevance, right? So if you look at the supply chain, essentially from the time somebody comes up with an order to the time it gets delivered in a warehouse, retail store, we get paid order to cash, the end-to-end workflow, right? So the end-to-end workflow, who are the different personas that are involved in these, right? So if you look at persona swim lanes, there's an account manager, there are these operators in between, there are these customer agents to track and trace, and then there is the whole accounting group making sure we get paid, we are paying our suppliers and everybody else, right? This whole process right now is going to be re-envisioned. The way we are doing it today versus how it's going to be done going forward is being envisioned as we speak, right? So we are doing that, where we are looking at all of those processes. And that process is completely getting revamped, Mustafa, right? So it is going to be redone with AI first mindset, right? So, and that is what I'm saying. With this, I am fairly confident that organizations will start seeing more and more revenue coming in, right? So I think the sales will be able to go get more deals. I think the operations becomes more efficient. I think even the number of potential incidents that may happen will reduce because there is visibility, there is efficiency and everything else. The tracking and tracing of all of those products from origin to destination will happen super fast. The time it gets for us to be paid and to pay somebody else will actually go down tremendously. So what I feel at the end of it, the bottom line is EBITDA for every company, if they do it the right way, will go up. Right?
Definitely. Without a doubt.
EBITDA will go up, but more importantly, the number of customers we can serve today, the number of solutions that we can offer today will actually go up. Right? So, and you can see that in the supply chain space, you can see it in the asset life cycle space, energy asset life cycle, same thing, right? If you look at you plan, you design, you execute, you maintain, and you then abandon. All of those steps, right? All of those steps will get more and more optimized, streamlined. You will re-envision everything else.
Are you in your point of view, any points of view about what it means from an organization perspective? How does that change things? Right. So for example, we can talk about product management, in which the roles between PMs and UX and engineers, in many ways, those walls are collapsing. Right. And so now you have to envision a new type of product team to do that work. And that's happening across the board and everything else as well, right? But then even the lines between the different types of salespeople that you have and the different type of marketing capabilities you have. So I'm curious to see if you have any thoughts on how does the organization change, right? So that's part of it. And then if that's how it's going to work, then what is it that you guys need to do or we need to do in order to facilitate that change?
Yeah. Look, I think the product organizations going forward, any team will be a hybrid team. What I mean by hybrid is you have humans and you have AI agents. That is going to be a team going forward, right? Humans will be focused on customer relationship, more customer-facing aspects would be focused on identifying the problems that need to be done. AI agents will be doing the mundane day-to-day stuff, right? Which is any manual stuff that is happening. And from a product organization, let's take a product organization, right? In a product organization, the PM still is responsible for identifying a problem, why you need to solve the problem, what is the value of it. AI is going to help them if you have the right kind of prompts, but the product manager will still do a lot of that. But the requirements writing, I think the AI can do a lot of it if the product manager gives it the right kind of prompts, saying, hey, write my requirements, what a business analyst could be doing. I think that role could evolve into an AI doing it. That is one aspect of it, right? Then once you get into the whole development aspect, if you have a service catalog of all of these different AI agents already, then it's about workflow orchestration of all of those agents. So the way to build the products could accelerate tremendously, right? In fact, even the testing and the quality assurance of the product could be done by AI agents, right? I think there are opportunities there, but you definitely need the right kind of architects and dev managers and so on to make sure they execute all of this. Documentation, all of that could be done by AI agents, right? Go to market, of course, will be done by the product managers, but the strategies and the ideas can come from AI agents. So it's going to be a very interesting dynamic. What I see this helping, Mustafa, is if my product managers are thinking about creating 10 new ideas, 10 new products in a year, now maybe they can focus on doing 30 or 40 or whatever, right? So they can help solve more challenges. That's what I feel, right? So from, of course, they have to be reskilled. They have to think from that perspective. For everybody who feels their job is a threat, I feel there could be a temporary, pain till you reskill yourself, but I think then it's going to be exponential, right? If that was the case, then before the computers came, people were doing a lot of things, right? So they've all reskilled, they've all become very savvy with using computers. Then the social media came and marketing people became more savvy. So I think the evolution will happen here, but I think the ability to solve more challenges, bigger problems, I think that is where I'm more excited. So the baseline will change, the ceiling will also change, right?
Definitely, without a doubt.
We had a cap saying we could only solve so many, and now I think that will go up. We'll be solving a lot more.
I agree with you. I think, a lot of PMs that we work with are worried about AI, and then once they really start working with AI, they really realize that it's almost impossible for AIs to replace people, because you actually need AI human synergy, which is what you were alluding to earlier, right? And I actually have a contrarian point of view. I think most people think AI is going to take their jobs away. I actually think it's the opposite. I actually think AI is actually going to require more PMs. Part of it is what you said, because you know this as well as I know. In any organization, the biggest limiting constraint is building the product, right? Or is basically engineering. But when engineering becomes easy and easier, then suddenly deciding what to build becomes harder and harder. Right? Because like I said, the ceiling, there is no ceiling, right? And yes, you can do 20 instead of 20, you can do 40 instead of 50. But at a certain point in time, when you have no constraints on the number of ideas that you can test out, you actually need to have deciding what to build becomes harder and harder. Right? And so I actually think you're going to need more PMs because you can have more ideas. Not only one person can do more ideas, but because you can now go into different markets very quickly, right? You can actually need more PMs to do that. So
I agree with you. In fact, I think what we'll probably see is democratization of this whole process, right? So subject matter experts now become a lot more valuable because subject matter experts can now go and test their own ideas, right? So the domain experts, I always tell people when they come back and say, what kind of area should I focus? If you're a domain expert, you're good because the domain expertise is still needed, right? So
very important, because you need something to evaluate the ideas that come out of AI. Like you're not going to take whatever comes out of AI and take it for, the word of God. It's at the end of the day, it's just suggestions, right? But you need
and there will be a lot of new jobs created, right, Mustafa? I mean,
very much so.
Ethical, just make sure the AI is coming out with the right kind of things. It's not hallucinating, somebody is doing the right kind of prompts. All of this is completely new, something that didn't happen before.
Yeah.
And the more we use AI, the more it's going to happen. Now, again, the other aspect that we also need to think about is from a cost perspective, right? I mean, anything new that comes out, cloud, when it came out, everybody jumped on the bandwagon. Then they realized that you're spending millions
Quite
of dollars.
costly.
Right? So over here, tokens, energy that's required to run the AI, those are all expensive. So we need to think through that. I think there will be initially a rush, and then people will realize that you have to pick and choose the right kind of the ideas that you want to focus on. So I think that is also going to happen.
Yeah. There's definitely a cost component right now. Right now, it's, you can buy an enterprise license and you basically it's a free for all, right? So you can use as many tokens as you want, but at a certain point in time, that subsidy from the VCs is going to end.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to pay for it. This is good. If you don't, and by the way, I can talk about this till the cows come home because this is my bread and butter. So we can go as deep. But I want to actually, I want to focus on the next part, which is the value piece, right? Yeah. You mentioned a lot about reduced productivity improvements, reduction or improvement in velocity, the ability to test ideas much faster. In your opinion, what are some of the leading or lagging indicators that you're looking at of the experiments that you're running in AI? And I know you can't talk specifically because of the work that you do.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious to see high level, what are the leading and lagging indicators you're looking at to show that value is driven, right? A lot of times I go into organizations and they like to do AI for AI's sake, which is great. And it's a great experiment, but at the end of the day, it has to have an outcome. Yeah. So I'm curious where, if you have a point of view or where you stand or what you
want. So we are going at it in a much more measured way. Perfect. Right? So, and what I mean by that is we have clear success criteria as to what the AI is supposed to do, right? So we are taking a baseline of where we are today. It could be in various aspects, from an operations perspective, sales perspective, right, from end-to-end visibility perspective, and so on. We are at a certain level, right? So my challenge to my teams and everybody else is, as we use AI, can you move that bar from that baseline to maybe 30% more efficient, 40% more efficient, right? And it has to be very tangible, because I will be able to see it, right? If from a sales cycle, can my account managers go and get 20 new customers, right? So and could they get it because we helped them take out all the manual steps, and now they're focused more on that, right? From an operations point of view, am I able to do all of my operations faster compared to, for example, if it took me 20 hours to do a certain thing, can I now do it in 10 hours, right? And that can be measured, right? Easily measured.
Very much. And I think a 50% reduction is normal, to be honest. You're probably looking at more than 70. You're looking at 75%, but
correct, right? So
is normal.
Yeah. So iteratively, I think it should become better and better. So those are low-hanging fruits we are starting off with, right? Then my bigger challenge to them is, seize your current market. Can I go after an adjacent market? Can I do something else? Can I have more innovative ideas? I know where we are today. What is going to happen in 3 years' time? I mean, we are in a supply chain industry. Boston Dynamics has come out with Atlas, right? I mean, there are going to be all these robots which will be much more agile and they can do a lot of work. How can we leverage? So it is the hardware, AI, both of them combination. What can we do? Where will we end up? Where is our competition going to be, and how will we position ourselves vis-a-vis them, right? So I think all of these, when we look at a 3-year, 5-year horizon, we have to think through all of those, right? So there are some tactical goals, there are some strategic goals. So that's how I'm going to measure success.
I actually think the second part is actually even more fascinating. But I think the first part, the productivity and velocity, is kind of almost baked in, right? I think the second part about moving in and out of markets, testing things out, is really where I think AI allows new capabilities that you can never think about. Right now, we're using technology to solve old problems. We have not used AI to come up with brand new capabilities that we haven't even thought about, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I'll tell you, right? I mean, if you start distilling it down into bits and bytes, or the basic building blocks,
yeah,
those basic building blocks, you can probably put them together with a different prompt to
yeah,
solve a completely new challenge,
of
right?
course.
So I think that's where, if the building block becomes an AI agent,
Yeah,
I can have an agentic workflow, but I can have different prompts, and now I can go after a different problem, right? So that is the hypothesis, right? I mean, that's what I'm seeing could be done. The
yeah,
verdict is out there, but I think that is where in 6 months' time, 1 year time, we'll see
yeah.
how it happens.
I'm curious, have you actually experimented with what I'm calling a digital twin? So, in manufacture, or let's take aerospace, because I used to be a mechanical engineer. We used to have this, um, we used to test materials and aircraft in the computer by simulating a digital twin of the real environment, right? One of the things that we're doing and we're experimenting with is creating a digital twin of our entire industry. So for example, you can actually have a synthesized user or a synthetic user base. You can actually have a synthetic competitor, and you can actually have your own company, and you can actually use that digital twin to test out product ideas.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll
And
give you a
say,
couple of
if I do this,
examples.
how is my competitor going to react?
Yeah.
What's the user reaction going to be? Or what's the customer reaction going to be? And how do I push it through my organization? I'm curious if you guys are already thinking along those lines.
Yeah. So did I do digital twin? Yes, in my past life in Halliburton and other places, right?
Yeah.
So we built a
That's why I
digital.
asked it, because it is the concept is very similar.
Very
It's
similar,
never
right?
been tested out on product before because you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
So we built a digital twin for an entire for the entire well design program, right?
Yeah.
So how to drill a well.
Perfect.
We had this big NOC from Europe where they said uh, drill a well in a day, right? So that was their grand scheme of things, and we had to work with various different partners, vendors,
Yeah.
Halliburton, and everybody else. So we created a digital twin. We created a simulation of what needs to happen, how it needs to happen, how can it happen, right? And then we did that. Same even with an asset life cycle, right? So if you look at any industrial automation, asset life cycle, can you create an entire digital twin of that particular asset, right? On the supply chain side, there are some projects we are looking at where the digital twin of a port, right? So, and a port where ships come and dock and so on, from an energy efficiency perspective, right? So we are looking at, can we create an entire digital twin? But the points that you brought up, Mustafa, are something new that I didn't think about, which is creating a digital twin and imagining synthetic competitors and imagining synthetic users. I think that's a very good idea, right? I think in the past, probably we didn't have the capacity to do all those things.
It's
But
it's brand new. I mean, we're
yeah,
testing out right now with a bunch of customers in which we're building
yeah,
digital environments for them to test out an idea. So to give you an example, going back to something that you said, right? It's easy for a product manager to go into AI and say, okay, this is the problem I'm solving. What are some of the features or some of the products that I have to build,
yeah,
right? That I think is relatively easy to do. But imagine if you can then put it into an environment in which say, well, if I build this, how is my competitor going to react?
yeah.
That never has happened before.
That has not happened before.
Or I know that I need to go talk to my customers because that's one of the things that a PM does. But you know what? It's very hard for me to talk to my customers on a daily basis. But what if I actually created a twin for Shashank?
Yeah.
Right? And then I actually was able to talk. Now, again, it's never going to be 100% accurate, right? Like with anything with AI, it's never accurate.
Yeah.
But it is something that you can now test even before you actually write the requirements. Because you can say, okay, if I do this, what does my market look like? How is the company going to react? How is the competition going to react? How are my internal stakeholders going to react? Because we've actually built digital twins of CPOs, CFOs, you name it, of that organization.
Yeah.
For the last company, we actually built a digital twin of Steve Jobs. And
Really?
what
Okay.
happens if Steve Jobs is working in your organization?
Yeah.
How would he approach this problem? And so when I think about new capabilities, I think AI just opens up just a brand new way of
Yeah.
looking at problems in things that we could not even think about, right? And by the way, I have to benefit you. I have to give credit to your industry because the idea of a digital twin came because of my background in engineering. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what if I can do that for? In your case, it was oil wells. For me, it was a wing of an airplane.
Yeah.
Like, why can't I do it here? But
Fantastic. Like, I think that that opens up a whole new area, right? Of course, we have to think through what kind of a customer agent we create, and then what is the
Oh,
first.
it
Yeah.
is not easy.
Yeah.
Trust me, we've been experimenting. My team has been experimenting with it for quite some time to figure out what is the right level of information you need to train the AI on to
Yeah.
act like a competitor,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or an
exactly.
agent for
So,
that
so
matter.
you have a competitor agent, you have a customer agent, and how do they?
And multiple
Yeah,
competitors and customer agents, right?
yeah,
Because you don't live in a one-dimensional world.
right.
This is good. I like sorry, again, the focus is on you. I like the um, I like the way you're thinking about the value piece because I think most people are thinking only on the first part, like how do I improve productivity and how do I improve effectiveness of my team.
Yeah,
But I think the second part is where I think we get into really interesting use cases like the digital twin, in which you can go in and out of different industries and test it out and enter markets that you may never have thought about or even possible in the past because an AI allows you to do all of these things much more efficiently, right?
yeah. Look, I think I, my background is actually electrical engineering and energy, right?
Mm,
And when I think about the future, thanks to AI, it's all about how can we create more energy, right?
yeah,
So again, it's a very fascinating piece which many people have not thought about, which is going forward, it's not just about compute and data and chips, it's also about the energy that is required to run these huge data centers, right? It could be natural gas, it could be renewable, it could be, but even the electrical grids that you're going to have, how can they support them?
yeah,
In Texas now, they're building these grids, but they have to support our regular consumption plus the AI
yeah.
consumption. I think it's going to be a very fascinating time, the next 10, 15 years. I'm definitely looking forward to what's going to happen. I want to have a bot in my house who can do the daily chores so that I don't
Yes,
have
trust
to be
me.
worried about
Me and my wife, and yes, we
it.
would love that, right? Because it's much easier than getting our kids. Our kids used to be a bot, but they're not that good, and they don't listen anymore. So, but it's good. Listen, I know Shashank, you and I can talk forever. I do have one last question, right? Just I want to get more. I want to take it down to more personal. Like, I'm curious to see how are you personally using AI right now
Yeah.
in your day-to-day work, or how's or maybe even an example from your team.
Yeah, look, I think my team starting last year, right? So I've been creating this culture of focusing on AI first,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now, of course, our team is much more savvy, right? So they are looking at all things. Even my product managers right now, they are unafraid to experiment, right? So they have an idea, they just go,
Yeah.
they just look at, whatever, cloud or open AI or whatever,
Yeah.
they can just go and build. I had interns who build on top of GPT plugins, man. So I,
Perfect.
I think I'm telling you, nowadays the kids are so fast to
Yeah.
adapt, right? So that's the mindset we are bringing, right? So all
It's
the
the AI
solutions,
AI first mindset is the
AI
best.
first mindset, AI first mindset, think, re-envision, you have to do some unlearning to relearn again, right? So
Yes.
think about, yes, this is
Unlearning
how
is
I
the
used.
hardest part.
That is the hardest part. That is the hardest part. But I feel that would be the difference between a Nokia versus an iPhone
Yeah.
types, right? So if you don't think like that, you're going to be number one for a few years like Nokia and then gone. Or you want to be like an iPhone who can last for 15, 20 years, right? So
Yeah. I agree. Fascinating world. I agree with you. I think it's just we're living in it. It's almost like a new industrial revolution, right? There's just so many things, and there's so many things we don't even know about. Things we're just kind of figuring it out.
I'm quite bullish about the whole healthcare industry too, right?
Yeah.
I think with AI, what we couldn't solve before, I think a lot more of them will be solved, right? So
what use cases do you see you're bullish about? I'm curious.
Just the kind of medicines that will come out. I'm sure autism will be solved in the next 5 years, with the amount of data that's coming. Cancer, of course, they're already working on that. They're already talking about finding solutions to Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all those things. But more importantly, I think, I don't know if you know Ray Kurzweil. He was probably one of your ex-colleagues, right? So he talked about singularity, and he said, you survive 20 years, then you're going to live for the next 140 years. I don't want to live 140 years, but I think that is also coming up in future. So,
yes. Well, there's a lot of talk about just we talk about digital twin, but there's companies out there who are thinking about building a digital reality for you.
Yeah.
And there's actually organizations right now who have actually created a digital avatar of your friends and family that you can talk to, or people who have passed away. And surprisingly, it's a big business. So go figure.
There are some ethical implications, but I think it is fascinating too, Mustafa, right? So if
and we have to, as a society, we have to, just like how we're struggling with social media right now. These are problems that we will have to struggle as a society to, like, well, what is real, what is not real, right? If the person I text to sounds a lot like my mom, right, even though she's not around, which, by the way, was the use case used by this company. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, right? I don't know. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it is an ethical question. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll have to end there, but we will continue the conversation. I would love to have you back at least a year from now to just see how things have changed, because I guarantee you what we talked about today will be table stakes by then. So
I would love to do that too, Mustafa, just to go back and see how wrong we were about certain things, or how right we were about one or two things. I would definitely like to do.
It's good to be a lot wrong, because then eventually you get to the right solution.
Absolutely. Hey,
very much a product mindset.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Let me pause the recording.